The image is familiar: Victoria Beckham, perfectly poised, immaculately dressed, sunglasses on, gliding through fashion weeks in front rows, as if she were born into couture. For years, the public narrative seemed simple. Former pop star marries football icon, reinvents herself as a designer, and builds a luxury brand on fame alone. But then came the documentary. And suddenly, that neat, glossy story cracked open. What emerged wasn't just a tale of celebrity ambition, but a far more complex, human, and at times uncomfortable truth about how Victoria Beckham actually built her fashion empire, and what it cost her to be taken seriously. When Netflix released Beckham in 2023, most viewers tuned in expecting a deep dive into David Beckham's legendary football career and global stardom. What they didn't expect was that one of the documentary's most talked about moments would revolve around Victoria. In just a few scenes, the series managed to reframe decades of public perception, challenging assumptions about privilege, success, and what it truly takes to survive in the ruthless world of high fashion. The documentary doesn't present Victoria as a flawless success story. Instead, it reveals the tension between who she was, who the public thought she was, and who she had to become in order to earn respect in an industry that rarely welcomes outsiders. Victoria Adams first entered the public eye in the mid-1990s as Posh Spice, 1/5 of the Spice Girls, the best-selling girl group of all time. By the time the group went on hiatus in 2000, the Spice Girls had sold over 85 million records worldwide, becoming a defining cultural force of their generation. Victoria's image was cool, reserved, fashion-forward. But that same image later worked against her. The documentary subtly reminds viewers that when Victoria transitioned from pop stardom into fashion, she wasn't greeted with applause. She was met with skepticism, even ridicule. The fashion industry, notoriously gatekept and insular, had little patience for celebrities who wanted to play designer. To many insiders, she was just another famous wife with a vanity project. Victoria herself has acknowledged this perception repeatedly over the years, and the documentary doesn't shy away from it. It shows how deeply aware she was of the eye-rolling and whispered dismissals. She knew that if she wanted to succeed, she couldn't rely on her name. In fact, she would have to work twice as hard to prove she wasn't relying on it. One of the most revealing moments in the documentary is deceptively simple: a conversation about her upbringing. Victoria describes her family as working class, only for David Beckham to interject from off-camera, reminding her, gently but firmly, that her father drove her to school in a Rolls-Royce. The exchange went viral almost instantly, not because it was cruel or confrontational, but because it exposed the tension between perception and reality. That moment became symbolic. For critics, it reinforced the idea that Victoria was out of touch. For others, it highlighted something more nuanced: her complicated relationship with privilege and self-identity. The documentary doesn't resolve that tension, it lets it sit there, awkward and unresolved, much like the public debate around her success. What the documentary makes clear, however, is that regardless of her background, the fashion business did not hand her credibility. When Victoria Beckham launched her eponymous fashion label in 2008, the timing alone was brutal. The global financial crisis was unfolding, luxury spending was tightening, and the industry was becoming more risk-averse than ever. Her debut collection, presented in New York, was met with cautious curiosity rather than praise. Reviewers noted the clean lines and minimalism, but questioned whether the brand had staying power. Victoria, aware of the scrutiny, made a deliberate decision early on. She would not position herself as a celebrity designer. She didn't plaster her face across campaigns. She didn't rely on red carpet spectacle. Instead, she focused on tailoring, fabric, and silhouette. The documentary underscores how intentional this strategy was. Victoria studied the industry obsessively. She surrounded herself with experienced professionals, listened more than she spoke, and took criticism seriously, even when it was harsh. Former colleagues and industry figures interviewed in the series describe her as disciplined, meticulous, and deeply involved in every aspect of the business. This wasn't a hobby. It was a full-scale operation that demanded years of financial risk. What many viewers may not have realized before watching the documentary is just how precarious the business was for a long time. Public records and reporting from outlets like The Guardian and Vogue Business have documented that Victoria Beckham's fashion label operated at a loss for several years. Despite strong critical acclaim, profitability remained elusive well into the 2010s. The documentary doesn't dwell on spreadsheets, but it doesn't hide the strain either. It hints at the pressure on the Beckham family, the long hours, the constant travel, and the emotional toll of building a luxury brand from the ground up. Victoria is shown not as a detached creative director, but as someone deeply invested and often deeply anxious about the future of her company. By the mid-2010s, the narrative began to shift. Fashion critics who once dismissed her started to take notice. Her collections were praised for their consistency and evolution. Celebrities like Michelle Obama, Eva Longoria, and Meghan Markle wore her designs, not as favors, but because they genuinely respected the aesthetic. In 2011, Victoria Beckham won the British Fashion Award for Designer Brand of the Year, an industry recognition that signaled she had crossed an invisible line from outsider to peer. The documentary frames this moment not as a triumphant ending, but as a milestone in a longer, ongoing struggle. Success, it suggests, didn't erase the doubt. It simply changed its shape. Another truth the documentary reveals is how carefully Victoria Beckham has managed her public image, and why. For years, she was criticized for appearing aloof or humorless. The series, however, offers glimpses of dry wit, self-awareness, and vulnerability that rarely make it into tabloid headlines. This isn't a rebrand, it's a reframing. She speaks openly about the pressure of being constantly judged, first as a pop star, then as a footballer's wife, then as a designer. The fashion empire didn't exist in a vacuum. It was built under relentless media scrutiny, where every misstep was magnified and every success was questioned. The documentary also contextualizes her relationship with David Beckham as a partnership, rather than a backdrop. While David's fame undoubtedly opened doors, the series is careful to show that Victoria's work ethic and creative vision drove her brand forward. Their marriage, often sensationalized by the media, is portrayed as a source of mutual support during periods of intense professional pressure. By the early 2020s, the Victoria Beckham brand began showing signs of financial stabilization. In 2022, the company reported improved revenues and a narrowing of losses, attributed to restructuring, a clearer brand strategy, and a focus on direct-to-consumer sales. The documentary doesn't turn this into a victory lap, but it does frame it as validation, proof that persistence, rather than celebrity, sustained the business. What makes the documentary resonate is that it refuses to offer a simple moral. It doesn't ask viewers to feel sorry for Victoria Beckham, nor does it ask them to admire her uncritically. Instead, it invites them to reconsider the assumptions they've held for decades. Is it possible to be privileged and still work relentlessly? Can someone leverage fame without being defined by it? And why are women, especially famous women, so often required to prove their seriousness again and again? The truth behind Victoria Beckham's fashion empire, as revealed by the documentary, isn't glamorous or effortless. It's messy, expensive, emotionally taxing, and deeply human. It's about resilience in the face of skepticism, about learning to be uncomfortable, and about earning respect in a space that doesn't easily grant it. By the final moments of the series, it's clear that Victoria Beckham's greatest transformation wasn't from pop star to designer, it was from being underestimated to being undeniable. And even then, the work never really ends. If this documentary teaches us anything, it's that success stories are rarely as simple as they appear from the outside. Behind every polished runway show is years of doubt, discipline, and determination that never make the headlines. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the real story behind Victoria Beckham's fashion empire, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. We break down the truths behind the biggest names, the biggest brands, and the moments that change how we see them. Stay curious, stay connected, and we'll see you in the next one.